Hello and welcome back, Squirrel Nation. The purpose of today's video is to tell you all the things you need to know if you want to start practicing Tolan. So diving in stages of the game, Tolan is extremely strong early game. I put him as OP early game. The reason for that is his passive does insane damage and the way his abilities work. Mid game, he's still very strong because he can scale up, especially if he gets early kills, and he'll still be a team fighting beast or an assassinating beast. He can just melt enemies. Late game, in my opinion, he starts to fall off because it gets harder for him to get the ultimates on the squishy targets he wants that are low on health. Also, it gets a lot harder for him to position in fights, and that will be covered in the strengths and weaknesses. So weaknesses, Tolan is squishy. He is a mage. He's not the squishiest mage, but compared to the bruisers like your Omens or your top lane or your typical DS laners, he is squishy. And here comes to why I think he is weaker in the late game, is because his damage is close range. Tolan, his damage is based around his passive, and to effectively use his passive and have it up means you want to hit all, you want to get 3 stacks of your passive from your S1, and you want to get 2 stacks from your S2. The problem is that to get 3 stacks from your S1 and 2 stacks from your S2, you actually have to be right, like in melee range of the enemy that you are damaging. So that can get rough later in the game because obviously assassins, the tanks, everybody's come online, they're at full builds, and they can just melt Tolan down. Boom or bust nature, Tolan is one of those heroes where if you play great, you are going to make him look like a god. If you're hitting your skill shots, if you're getting your maximum stacks of your passive and it's just non-stop lightning everywhere, he looks like a god. However, if your micro is not good, you're not getting your stacks up of your passive, and you're not triggering his lightning strike, then you are going to look terrible and you are going to be a weight sinking your team. Anyways, on to the strengths. Tolan is mobile. His S2 can stack 3 times, so he basically has 3 flickers, so that's amazing. Wave clear is outstanding. He can basically S1 and then S2 through a minion wave, and it will just clear it. So he's one of those mages who can 2-shot a wave. Burst, he has crazy burst. If you, there's a couple combos we'll cover later, but for instance, if you use your S1 and then your S2, you're not, if you get all stacks of the passive, you'll actually trigger your passive just from those 2 spellcasts, plus those 2 spellcasts, the damage they'll do is already huge burst damage. It will kill any squishy hero. And even the bruisers are going to be low to where you can ult them and they're going to die. The tanks are a little different, but I mean, it's still going to hurt. And then, yeah, just crazy damage. Early game, he has just crazy damage. Okay, so countered by, let's go through those really quick. By the way, the counters and counter by, I go from the pro play, I go and I look through all the pro play, I see when Tolan was used, when he won, who was he laning against, when he lost, who was he laning against, or who was on the enemy team. So anyways, Darcy, Tolan does not do well against Darcy. I think the main reason for that is that Darcy has invulnerability, and he can dodge a lot of what Tolan's trying to do, so he can mess up Tolan getting his stacks, and then also Darcy can poke quite hard himself. So Richter, same thing, he can dodge a lot of Tolan's abilities with his S2, which makes it hard because Tolan can't get his passive. Also, Tolan has a bursty kit, so if you dodge part of his burst damage, he is going to be in a disadvantageous spot. And then also, Richter can stay on top of Tolan. Basically, Tolan can try to get away with his S2, but Richter can catch up with his S1 dash. So anyways, Alistar is hard for Tolan because, like we said, Tolan wants to be in a fight. Like, he's going to need to be in a fight to maximize his damage. So if Alistar ults him, he is going to be in a really bad spot because he already is in the middle of the fight. Another thing that makes it hard for Alistar is he has a really fast wave clear also. And like we said, Tolan wants to S1 and S2 through the minion wave. So he's like, Tolan's sitting in the minion wave. So Alistar can lay out his stun, and it's going to make it very hard for Tolan to position around it. So Alistar just kind of makes Tolan's life hard, to be honest. So who does Tolan counter? He counters Saphira, Kali, and Baldum. Saphira, he does very well because she has a very slow clear speed, okay? And she does have mobility with her S2. However, keep in mind that Tolan, his S2, if he hits you twice with his S2, it actually has a big slow. So Tolan can basically just out-damage Saphira if she gets in bad positioning. And then, yeah, she just, that's basically how it goes. And this one was, honestly, I pulled more from the pro play. I saw that Tolan often won when he played against Saphira. Kali has very low mobility, and she relies on her shield, right? The shield gives her more AP damage, and it also gives her mobility. But Tolan can melt that shield, and afterwards, Kali is very squishy, and she has very low mobility at that point, so Tolan can just wreck her if he gets on top of her. And then Baldum, honestly, this one I think is because, and I got this again from pro play, and I think this one is because Baldum stacks armor, so mages are already going to do good against Baldum. That's kind of the nature. And then also Baldum obviously has that tankiness. He's going to be in the fight, and he is something great that Tolan can basically stack his passive off of, because Baldum, how do I explain this? Baldum has a very big hitbox. Not all heroes are the same thickness, so Baldum is very big and bulky, which makes it easy for Tolan to get passive off of. Anyways, moving on. Here are 3 different builds. Same thing with the builds. I tend to grab these builds from like Conqueror plus players on the different servers, and the ones that make the most sense. So anyways, the tank build, this build works really nicely in the current state of the game because the minions are doing so much damage. If you notice, what I thought was very interesting is you take 10 mithril for the armor and the magic resistance, and then also you're building tanky right away in the game, so basically the minions are not going to crush you like they do the other laners. So we said Tolan has a very fast wave clear, so with this build, you go to lane, you clear the lane quickly, you're trading out damage with the enemy already, and then you're going to clear the wave quicker than them, and then they have a very hard choice, right? Their choice is they need to tank the minions outside of the tower, or they're going to lose that gold. And if they try to tank the minions, they're going to take even more damage, and you might even just get a kill, and during this time you're roaming. Also notice that you take 10 Devour, which gives Tolan great sustain because of his passive and just his high magic damage kit. So the other thing I'll note on this page is the starting is very similar. Phoenix tier, you get your tier 2 boots, you get Orb, and then Reyes. That basically is not changing no matter these builds. That is the core of Tolan. I would never not go with those as starting items. Anyways, last distinction is if you're going pure damage, you're not going to go tanky. You want to go for either the anti-death ball or anti-assassin. The anti-death ball, the reason I call it anti-death ball is because of boomstick. So boomstick, the way it works is it does additional AoE damage every time one of your abilities hit. Well, this works extremely well with Tolan because of his passive, right? He gets 5 strikes of lightning. So every time the lightning hits a different player in a team fight, boomstick's going to trigger. So you can imagine that damage really, really stacks in a team that is deathballing. And by deathball, I mean an enemy team that's sticking together in close quarters. Okay, so that's anti-death ball. Anti-assassin, the only difference between the builds you see is Arctic Orb. Arctic Orb is amazing versus assassins, Zukas, Wukongs, Quillins, those type of things, because those heroes, they have a short time window that they need to put out a lot of damage. So if you time it well and you Arctic Orb when they start to use those cooldowns, that burst damage, and they can't hit you with it, then they are going to be in a really, really bad spot. And like we said, Tolan is very mobile. He can stay on top of those assassins. He can make their life extremely hard. So anyways, those are the builds. Hero synergies. Elsu works very well with Tolan because Tolan's ultimate is 1, very long range, and 2, it's an execute move. And what I mean by execute is Tolan's ultimate is designed to kill low health targets, okay? So what does Elsu do? Elsu does huge burst damage with his snipes, so they work very well together because Elsu snipes somebody, they're very low health, they're in danger, Tolan ultimates them, they're dead. And all that happens from a huge range, right? And vice versa, Elsu is generally going to build Fenrars, which means he's also going to have execution type style on his skill shots and his auto attacks. So they just have a nice synergy that way. Teamy is a great one with Tolan because, like we said, Tolan, to optimize his damage, wants to get into the enemy team. He wants to get his passive, just non-stop passive, going around. And sometimes he can get caught, or he can get out of position in a bad spot, and that's where Teamy comes in. Teamy ultimate with Tolan is amazing. Tolan comes back to life. He can S2 back to a safe position, and then probably get 2, maybe even 3 rounds of his passive, and then re-heal up because of that Reyes Devour type runes. Tel'Anis, works well because just the sustained damage, and this one also I mainly I pulled from the pro play. I just noticed that the pros love to run Telenis with Tolan, and I think the reason for this is because Telenis has a lot of sustained damage, so she's getting everybody low, and then Tolan is a great cleanup crew, right? When he sees somebody is in execution range, he can ultimate them and just keep it going. So, on to the last section of the video, what to practice. I don't want to overcomplicate. Here's 4 things I would practice if you want to try to up your Tolan game. 1, get 3 stacks of your passive from your S1. So the S1 is the 3 lightning bolts that shoot out in front of Tolan. So you get 1 stack of the passive for every lightning bolt that hits enemies. So practice hitting all 3 lightning bolts. And to do that, you basically need to be in melee range of the enemy hero. And if you aim it properly, all 3 bolts will hit them, do massive damage to them, and you'll get 3 stacks of passive. Second thing you need to practice is getting 2 stacks of your passive from Tolan's S2, which is his flicker mechanic. And basically, you get 1 stack from the point at which you start to flicker, and you get 1 point from where your flicker ends. So if you hit it at the front of the enemy and the back of the enemy, or let's say the right side of them and the left side of them, you will get 2 stacks of your passive. Remember, 5 stacks is going to trigger your passive, okay? So if you hit your S1, S2 perfectly, you will also have your passive up, and that is when Tolan becomes insane. And that moves on to the third thing you should practice is S2 to S1 combo. So the reason for that is, let's say you are close to the enemy, they're hitting you. What you want to do is you want to S2 to the front or back of them, and then throw your S1 and hit them with everything and your passive, and if you get good at that move, you're going to be putting out a lot of damage. You can also S1 and S2, that's kind of situational which one you would do, but anyways, the combo is hitting S1, hitting S2, you can do in either order depending on the situation, and yeah, that is it. So the last thing is a little more complicated, which is flicker. The reason you would flicker into this is because, let's say it's a marksman, they're kind of far away from you, they want to kite you, they don't want to let you next to them because you can melt them, then you could hide in a bush, flicker, then use your S2 to close the gap, and then hit your S1, huge burst damage onto the marksman, ult them, and they're probably dead. So anyways, that concludes today's Tolan guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I tried to pack it in a lot tighter this time, a quicker interval. And anyways, if you like how I did today's video, please let me know in the comments, and just let me know how your day's going. And yeah, anyways, take care and happy ranking.